topic is how to use ISO 27001 to help save your business. And it's no secret to anybody that there are all kinds of nasty things going on all the time. So for those people who are visiting today, are you prepared for cyber attacks? And as you all know by now, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. And Jerry's going to tell me how many number ones. If you're not prepared at all, just type number one into the chat box. If you're trying to figure out some risks, type in number two. If you've got a service that monitors your traffic and spots attacks, type number three in there. And then if you've got a complete information security management system in place, type in number four. And then if you've got some other take on this, if you think you're ready, but you don't fit into any of these categories, just type what else. Just type your thoughts into the chat box. And Jerry will, since I can't see the chat box and show the slides at the same time, if you can give me an update, Jerry, what's going on out there?
Yeah. So don't be shy, just put something in the chat box so that we can get a feel for what the audience is experience is with this topic.
Yes.
And one person. We've got one person who's put their number in.
Okay. Which one was that, Jerry?
Mike and number three.
Good. Use a service that monitors and traffics. And most of you who use any kind of internet service provider, they monitor your traffic. They could spot attacks. And it's the challenge with those kind of services today is that sometimes they will outsource what they're selling to you to somebody else. So you've got different layers of security that you need to take a look at. And we talk about that in ISO 27001 in the Annex A that Kevin was talking about earlier. Anybody else?
Nobody else has put anything in yet.
That's amazing. How many are here today? 18?
There's 16 people.
16 people. Every single one of you uses the internet. I know you do for your business. Even Mike Hart, like me, we both use the internet for our business. Okay. Anything else? Nothing else happening?
No.
All right. We have very low marks for participation for all these people. I'll be sending. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I said I commented. I think folks are a little bit hesitant to share their thoughts, but I'm going to speak for myself personally at home.
Yes.
I do use some kind of service that monitors, my traffic and looks for anything that's looks out of place.
Yeah, that's great.
Kevin,
thanks. Yeah.
Kevin, what would we be here? Would we be a 1, a 2, or a 3?
Sorry, I've been off getting my risk management thing ready for you, Jerry, because we've had power. We've had power outages here, and I've had to recover some things. Sorry.
Sorry, Kevin.
Okay.
But if you were to look at the 4 categories here, where would you say we sit at close reach?
We're a 3.
We're a 3. Okay, that's
right.
right. I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure.
All right.
Okay, so we've had 3 3s, and
12.
Nothing from anyone else.
All right. And
so let's move on from that.
Yep, we sure will. Thanks very much. Thanks for your participation to the 3 folks that joined us. What we're going to be talking about today is what does an information security management system look like? Why have one? I mean, they take time and effort to put them in like any other management system. And then if you decided to go ahead, what would an implementation plan look like? This is quite interesting too. This was yesterday on the ISO Geneva website. You can see the top there right up here, iso.org. This is the global head of standards in the world. And I just checked in to see what were the most popular standards. And they list ISO 9001 here, naturally, 2 million certificates out there. And the next one you can see here, but it's probably the type's a bit small on your screen, but it's ISO 27001. And then the other one that people are looking at through their eyes anyway are the net zero guidelines. So without question, with all the stuff that shows up in the news virtually weekly, people are starting to get more interested in looking after their securing their information for sure. And it'll help you manage a cyber attack. Nothing could ever prevent a cyber attack, and no system, no matter what the salespeople tell you, nothing can protect you 100% from a cyber attack. But by getting a hold of the risks involved, by working your way through your organization, looking at where information is sitting, looking at your information assets, looking at your physical assets, even the perimeter of the building, actually, at one point, it's all going to help. Nothing will ever protect you completely, but it'll all help. And I just for fun looked up the definition of a cyber attack, and it's any attempt to gain unauthorized access to a computer, computing system, or computer network with the intent to cause damage. And that comes from that Tech Target company, and it happens to everybody all the time. We've got a couple examples we're going to talk about later, but it's out there, and every one of us, even small businesses like Mike and myself, we need the internet to live. We need the internet to do our business, to stay alive. And consequences, if you do get attacked and they are successful, you can have a financial impact. You can have a brand reputation impact, especially in the world of close reach. I mean, your reputation is well known within government and perhaps some private industry, but definitely if all of a sudden you were attacked and suffered, it could have an impact on the future business. You just never know. Stakeholders' confidence in you could be damaged if you had a successful attack. And finally, production disruption, even producing intellectual property like most people here do. So getting yourself in a place where you're protecting yourself, it's even more important now as the digital transformation initiatives are going on. We just heard from Kevin earlier about the Canadian Digital Adoption Program, CDAP, and cloud computing is growing probably daily. We saw remote work grow exponentially during COVID, and some companies haven't gone back. I think Jerry's working from home today. And Kevin, are you working from home as well, or are you back in the office? And he's probably on mute. That's okay.
I'm normally in the office. But today with the ice, we have. I'm at home.
Yeah, good. So a lot of and I think COVID helped a lot of organizations like everybody here today get used to the idea of or be comfortable with the idea of having an alternate place to work from. And we hope it's not Starbucks. Their system's a bit Swiss cheesy, but nevertheless, all the changes that have made us rely even more on the internet, more on information security, and made it more evident that we need to do something. This was a particular day I chose and checked the local time. It was just before 1 p.m. and there had already been almost 400,000 attacks, not successful ones, but had been there. And we have this other note over here. If you check arcticwolf.com, this was June 22, and that was last June. Whoops, sorry. And Canada is trying to curb cybercrime with mandatory reporting. I don't know if any of your organizations are in that category, but nevertheless, it could help overall. This particular standard, ISO 27001, was first released in 2013, and it was the poster child for the harmonized structure. At the time, some of you may know the term high-level structure, HLS, and a couple of years ago they switched to the term harmonized structure. But it was the very first one on the street, 2013, and then ISO 9001 followed in 2015. ISO 14001 also 2015, 45001 came out in 2018, and there are a whole host of standards now that all use the harmonized structure, which means that if you have any one of them in place, it's very straightforward. I won't say simple, but it's very straightforward to add the requirements of any of these other standards. You can harmonize everything. You can harmonize the context. Leadership is the same for all 5. Planning would be specific to each area, but still the technique could be the same, risk identification, so on. Resources, exactly the same way. The one clause that's unique to each of all these standards is Clause 8, operations. But some of them are even fairly close. If you think of health and safety and the environment, 45,001 and 14,001, even the operations clause is very similar. Measurements, clause 9, they'll be the same all across the board. And of course, you can use the same nonconformance and incident reporting technique for all of them. And just choose, maybe develop something like a drop down where you'd have it nonconformance for quality, for environment, for health and safety, for information security. So it makes it very easy to integrate the systems. And of course, if you integrate these systems, instead of having 2 separate systems, it's going to save you money from the registrar's point of view as well. And even if you don't have an existing system, 27001 can be implemented just by following your workflow. And what you want to find out is in your workflow, where is information sitting still? It's easier to protect. And then what activities that we do is information moving from one place to the other. And those are the areas where you need to get focused and get some safety, some precautions put in place. So the usual clauses you all know or have heard of probably, clauses 4, context, 5, leadership, 6, planning, 7, support, 8, operations, 9, performance measurement, and 10, improvement. Those clauses still exist in ISO 27000, but they also have a new section called Annex A, and you may recall that Kevin mentioned it earlier. We used to have 114 requirements, or there are currently 114 requirements in the 2014 version, and then now they've combined them and added 11 new ones, but combined the other 102 into a total of 93 requirements, 4 sections. Some of them require documented controls. Some of them require just that you implement the procedure, and it could be done a number of different ways. And it goes along with clause 6.1.3, information security risk treatment and companion. This document is a must, an absolute must. If you're implementing ISO 27001, this document 27002, it has 150 pages of information for the 93 requirements. There are actually 4 pages that are annex, they call it Annex B1 and B2, and those 2 annexes show you the crosswalk between the original 114 controls and walking them to the new 93 controls, and it goes both ways. Yes, it's an absolute must. It's really, really a powerful tool. So if you put all these resources together, it'll keep you headed in the right direction. And they have, I think we're going to see the risk document later too. And why bother? Well, if you have a structured approach, it's going to help you keep your information assets safe. And it was a new concept for me, thinking about information as an asset. And of course, all of your assets, there's intellectual property, there are assets, your physical assets, laptops, phones, tablets, all that kind of thing. And then information is an asset as well. And you keep these all together in a document called Statement of Applicability. And that's built from the 93 controls that we've talked about. And in Annex A, and you can think of Annex A as a complete second set of requirements within ISO 27001. And as we said, there's 93 requirements, but they're broken into these clauses: organizational controls, people controls, physical controls and technological controls. And what I've done in a few of these is line those up with the Ishikawa fishbone. So you'd have the people would be the old man, the method would be probably the physical controls and technological controls. The organization controls would be the milieu and maybe the machinery too. You'd have to kind of figure them out as you go, but it's a good way to, if you think of these as a parallel to the Ishikawa fishbone, it's a great way to start some root cause analysis activities. And same with audits. You're going to use the audits to measure the health and effectiveness of your information security management system. Penetration testing, things like that can help as well to test the strength of your system. And the operations clause requires an information security risk assessment at planned intervals. And those of you who are already ISO certified know that term, planned intervals. So it's the same kind of approach, just more specifically focused on information security. Management needs to know how audits can pay for themselves, so if they figure out a way to devote enough resources to doing audits. Sometimes they think they're just a pain and they're only done to satisfy ISO requirements, but they can be a great tool to find out ways to improve your system. So from this first part, 3 takeaways from part 1, ISO 27001 dovetails with all the other harmonized structure standards. There are 93 specific controls. Whoops, spelling mistake there, sorry. In Annex A, and you can use your own auditing method, but increase the focus on security risks. So, Jerry, we have another poll, and anybody who does not submit, Jerry has the power to kick you out of the meeting. So, which he's not going to do. So, can you think? Do you think your organization would gain any value from developing and not necessarily? I'm not suggesting certification or anything. Just, I mean, that certainly is a good option, especially if you need it to bid on projects. But do you think your organization would gain any value from having an information security management system, as opposed to just crossing your fingers and hoping everything's going to be safe? And how are the responses looking this time after our threat, Jerry? Did it make any difference?
Well, it's people typing, so we got to give them a couple of seconds.
Yes, good. Good.
But just from the last poll, there's something that I want to bring up.
Yes,
we had one other response for the first poll. Somebody said they're personally at 3, but I hope my clients, CBSA and NRCan, are at 4.
Good.
But we don't. Not sure if that's the case or not.
Yeah, and this might be a good document just to use to assess that, not necessarily for purposes of certification. And thanks for that extra note, which reminds me, if any of you have any questions, feel free to type them into the box, and Jerry can certainly.
So we have
Paul. Yeah.
So we have for close reach, Kevin put in that we're at 2 for some items and 3 for others.
Oh, good. That's a good point. You maybe
Mike said he uses a third-party service who are experts where he is not.
Oh, okay, good.
And we got another one from Rick saying 2.5.
2.5, good.
And Ted said he's at 3.
Excellent. So nobody's ISO 27001 certified. If you're if you're thinking about it, let us know. Just you might even, if you want to type in something like we're considering about it, we'd like to learn more about it, and Close Reach can certainly help you with that.
All right, Mike made another comment.
Just as a note, QualiWare actually is 27001.
Thank you.
Compliant, because they provide through us a cloud-based environment for the government of Canada to use.
Right.
And that's the environment that we're currently working with QualiWare so that it will be protected B at the PBMM level. So protected B, medium level.
Excellent.
They're actually registered. They're actually registered and certified.
Excellent. Thanks. And thanks for that. I know, Jerry, you and I talked about that when we were getting this thing ready. I'm glad Kevin mentioned it. Thanks. Any other comments or anything in there? Going once, going twice. All right. So how could you benefit from implementing this particular standard? Again, if you have anything at all in place, it would certainly make life easier, but this is it's also an excellent standalone standard as well. You can manage cyber attacks better when you meet all of your regulatory requirements, since the laws and regulations are put in to protect people, but especially personally identifiable information. We've got all kinds of laws around those. It helps you create a methodology to make sure you identify the regulations you need to comply with. I'm assuming that all of you have someone or a service in your organizations that have identified what you have to comply to, what compliance you need to meet, and this having a system in place can certainly help you keep track of those. You'd identify them in a list somewhere, something like that, and you'd include them in all your internal audit activities. You'd make sure that you have either someone expert on your team, expert in legal matters, or have an organization come in who specializes in that sort of thing. And there are requirements in the standard to know what laws and regulations apply, and additional requirements to make those laws known to everybody. It's not all that helpful if only one or two people in an organization like Close Reach know what those laws are. Everybody needs to know what they are, because they're the ones that will be, if anything does happen, it would probably be caused by an individual not using one of the controls properly. And then you have to audit yourself for compliance. Again, that doesn't mean literally Close Reach employees would have to use Close Reach employees for the audit, although you could. But just as long as you have met the requirement to check the compliance to legal requirements, you'd be good. If your customers are not requiring you to be 27 certified now, they may in the future. My very first client for ISO 27001 was an IT service in Ottawa. And they found they were not able to bid on a project because they weren't ISO 27001 certified. It's not rampant yet, I don't think, in the government. Maybe the government attendees today can help us clarify that, but it is starting to show up in some RFPs and RFQs. And it's a good thing to do anyway, just to protect yourselves. Examining your system with some kind of process in place can help you avoid massive outage and the resulting expenses. I've named a couple here. You might remember, some of you, the Rogers outage last year. They took a huge hit immediately. I don't know if it impacted their bid to purchase Shaw. I think Jerry and I were talking about this yesterday. I think they still went ahead and made that deal, but it was certainly put on hold while they got their stuff figured out. And then Chapters just last month, I think, or the month before, they were crippled for almost a week. They couldn't even take money at the stores. They couldn't even take cash if people came in to have it. They couldn't take the books out of inventory or anything. And that was a ransomware attack. So they're definitely, and ransomware is not going away. I was just reading about that today. It may have impacted the deal. I don't know if if it would have lowered the price or raised the price of Shaw to purchase or not, but it would they probably had to write some extra clauses into the agreement for sure. Can help you get your information ducks in a row. Opportunities for improvement. If you have sort of a systematic approach to looking at yourself, ISO 9001, 14001, any of these standards, you'll have a requirement to do internal audits. And it'll definitely keep you sort of on your toes, I guess I would say. But if you can find opportunities for improvement in your audits and in your feedback from employees, feedback from customers, feedback from any of your interested parties, really, those opportunities for improvement are going to create efficiencies. That's why they're nuggets of gold, especially non-conformances. They are totally nuggets of gold to help you get better control of your information and then maybe do better risk management. Whenever a non-conformance happens, you can always ask yourselves, if we had done better risk management, could we have maybe avoided this non-conformance, as opposed to saying who screwed up and go on a witch hunt to try to find somebody to blame. So look for the weakness in your system and then ask if it could have been avoided. All right, so some other benefits: you can identify breaches more quickly if you've got a system in place. Employees will know exactly what to do when an incident happens, rather than saying, holy smokes, what do we do now? Actually, I was in a store today picking up some guitar strings for one of my guitars, and they'd had an outage in the afternoon, and it took about 10 minutes to check out because the employees weren't sure how to restart the equipment after an outage. So make sure your employees will be trained, and this will be one of the requirements, of course, of any management system standard, is to have people who are competent, keep them trained, and keep training employees about phishing emails and that kind of any kind of scams that are coming along. Keep them, but unfortunately, the scams get invented faster than we can protect ourselves against them sometimes. But if people are taught to be aware of suspicious things, that can definitely help. All of your internal processes will get better if you have an incident and it's managed well, and management acts on the results of the incident. That's why incidents are so valuable, and another reason to create a culture where people are willing to share issues that have happened, either with clients, with management review, with audits, internal and external audits, and even you can set up some performance measures, KPIs, if you like that term, key performance indicators, or whatever term you use. Those things can tell you if things are starting to get a little bit off track. And if things are getting a little bit off track, you might be weakening your defenses against a cyber attack for sure. So in this one, we saw 27001 can help you meet regulatory requirements, identify breaches sooner. Again, if you have the right tools set up to identify them. You want enough information to know that something may be in trouble, but you don't want so much information that all the noise actually hides the actual signals or the flags or the alarms or your spidey senses. Could give you a competitive advantage if you get certified before you have to. It's going to give you a better sleep at night advantage regardless. Even if you had never needed it for bidding on contracts, you'll at least know that you're taking better care of your information. And costs will be avoided for fines and contract breaches. So we have another poll. How ready are you to improve your information security activities? Assuming that none of you is perfect, and assuming that whatever you're protected against today is going to be, I won't say gone tomorrow, but there's 40,629 new methods to attack coming in the next month or so. Any thoughts? Anything coming in, Jerry?
No, there are people typing again. So.
Oh, good. As long as we got some people typing.
So Ted said he's a 2, or they are a 2. I guess he's talking about his organization.
Good. Fairly ready. Somewhat our structure related to information security is good. Are you fairly ready? Are you testing yourselves? And there are hundreds of organizations, probably a dozen or so right in Ottawa that you can have them check you for security, do penetration testing. There are 30 or 40 different kinds of tests they can do. Yes.
Some more coming.
Good.
You just have to wait for a second or two. I think the freezing rain is
yes,
probably slowing things down a little bit. So.
I'm just going to sneeze, and I can't turn my microphone off. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
There we go.
So Kevin has said that we do not test against cyber attacks. That is something that our service providers do, Bell and Microsoft.
Oh, good.
But I will add something to that. For our own internal processes and things like that, we are putting the controls associated with 27001 in place internally. We're either using Microsoft, services that are available to do that, and we can actually run a test that Microsoft provides that points out areas of exposure, with how we have configured policies and services. So we do that, and then we make a judgment call on what to implement and when.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't realize it till I started working in this standard that Microsoft does have a lot of valuable tools available for companies that use their products to develop some, as you said, Kevin, a good approach to securing information for sure. Thanks.
Okay, and Mike Hart has a 3.
Good. Yep.
So another 3. And then we have somebody else typing, so we just wait for a couple of seconds. Okay. If it comes in.
Actually, I'll give you one more example. We used to use LastPass as our password management tool.
Oh.
And given the recent breach that they've had, we moved off of that tool to another, one of the other 2 prominent password managers. So everyone in the organization is required to do that. And because of what we've purchased for the company, they can also protect their families.
Oh, wow. That's brilliant. So that even coming to a session like this and even learning that piece of information, Kevin, thanks for sharing that. That could be helpful to a lot of people here today.
Yeah, we actually went with NordPass is what it's called, NORDPASS. And they use a newer encryption algorithm that LastPass and 1Password do not. So we went with newer technology. So,
well, it'd be interesting to see if the single sign-on that people love so much is stronger, or maybe see if they can make it stronger, or if people might start moving away from it just because of the extra vulnerability. But it's good to hear that people are out there working and making choices. Thanks. Anything else, Jerry?
One more vote from Rick. He said he's a 3 personally. So.
Oh, good. And anything you can do personally, everything we're talking about here today applies to everybody here as well, to your own personal stuff. It's there's all kinds of strange things out there, and things like spam. Where will help. I use for all our clients. We use the spam detectors that we found to be most effective, and things keep changing too. I guess that's the other part of this. So we're in it. Yeah.
Just one more from Scott, who's our IT manager. It says he routinely audits all of our accounts and systems daily.
Excellent. Thanks.
And so. Yeah, and Kirill is typing, but maybe we want to move on and we can read Kirill's later.
Yeah, you can let me know about that when we get to the next poll. Thanks very much. Yeah. So if you decided you wanted to do something, as I said, this is not an advertisement to get ISO 27001 certified. You can use the tool. You can use the standard to just beef yourself up. Like Kevin mentioned, they're putting some of the controls from Annex A in place. This is the document here. This is 27001, but 27002 is going to be very helpful. It helps you design the controls and meet the requirements of Annex A and develop a robust information security management system. This is the new version 2022. This particular page here, there is the picture of the cover of the actual requirements, and it includes Annex A. 27002 is the one that gives you the explanation. As I said, there's about a page and a half of information on each of the 93 controls. It's 150 pages, and it's really a really excellent document. You could just use it and get lots of ideas on how to improve the security in your organization or even yourselves. And in order to get going, you want to create a cross-functional team, of course, get as many different points of view as you can. Make sure you get IT and you get sales on it. Sales, of course, because they are the ones that do probably, well, I guess your consultants would when they're working with your government clients. Get the people involved who do the most activity with your customers. Information sitting still is fairly easy to take care of various ways, but it's when you're moving it from one place to another that it gets exposed, and it's less it's harder to secure and less likely to be as safe as information that's sitting still. If you start with something like this and map the information flow from the time a customer calls until the project is complete, it'll give you places to pinpoint along the way that are particularly vulnerable. Make sure all your people who are working for you are acutely aware of the dangers of sending sensitive information from Starbucks or Tim Hortons or wherever else you're having your coffee and doing emailing from, just because they're so much more vulnerable. It's going to help you decide if you do this sort of the workflow approach. It'll help you decide which assets are critical. Remember, again, when we talk about assets, we're talking about intellectual property as an asset, information as an asset, and even the hardware that are assets that you're all use. Phones, laptops, probably not towers so much. I don't know if any of you still have servers in your organizations, but many of you still do, I'm sure. And make sure that just for example, you could have some kind of security in the room where the servers are kept, if you still have some, so that you could tell if someone went in there and was trying to mess around with any of the programming, putting a backdoor in or some kind of tool or some kind of program to make it possible to breach. So if you have even the physical securities like that, we talked about one of the new requirements in Annex A. I think it's 4.11. I can't remember which one it is, but it's called data masking. All of you have looked at your receipt when you leave a store and you notice the first 12 numbers if you used a debit or credit card, the first 12 numbers are X'd out. You can only see the last 4. Any kind of data masking like that you can do for super sensitive information will definitely help you improve your security level. That's for sure. And if we think of the plan, do, check, act, the doing phase of your implementation plan, you can create after you do the mapping. That's your planning phase. And figure out how you want to look at your own system. What do you want to check for? What kind of breaches are you looking for? Or what kind of potential breaches are you looking for? We've talked a little bit today about how ready you actually are. So you can, this again is where the cross-functional team is so helpful, because the people on the team might have a different idea or a different perception of how ready they think you are. You've all had this experience before with a nonconformance where somebody in the group says this is a catastrophe. It's got to be dealt with immediately. It's a huge problem, and somebody else in the same group might say, yeah, it's a problem, but it's not that bad. So that's why a cross-functional team is so helpful, and that's where your current level of security might be seen differently by different people. Assets including both information and equipment and intellectual property as well can always. So that's where you get going. That gives you a starting point. It's sort of like a baseline, you might say. And this is the risk tool for ISO 27001, or the risk guidance is ISO 27005. And if any of you have used ISO 31000, which is a generic risk management model, I guess you'd say, this has been tweaked to specifically address the unique aspects of risks related to information security. 31000 is just generic. And, this is a really important word right here. It's guidance. Some people use these documents and actually try to make their system meet the requirements. It's just guidance, but you'd be surprised, you'd be amazed and delighted, I'm sure, at how much good information is in here. Determining risks. Usually determining risks related to quality are somewhat easy. Risks related to the environment. Health and safety is a challenge, of course, especially on construction sites. But information security is quite a different animal, because there's so much information is everywhere in all of your organizations, and it's always flowing, it's always coming in, it's going out. And then, of course, unlike the other ones I mentioned, there are people all around the world trying to find ways to get at your stuff and see if they can turn it into some kind of profit for them or other. And there's an additional document, 27007, that specifically addresses doing internal audits for an information security management system. It's based on ISO 19011, but it does address the uniqueness of auditing an information security management system. So once you've identified what the risks are, this is up in clause 6, you identify the risks, you analyze the risks, and then you evaluate them, like low, medium, and high, and decide which ones you need to develop controls for, or develop a new method of managing it for. And this document, the 27005 that we talked about here, it introduces the concept of, you can see that term, risk acceptance, demonstrating the knowledge or the awareness that you cannot eliminate risk. You cannot eliminate all risk. You can manage lots of it, but there's some stuff that you just have to say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. It's always going to be a risk, and we'll do the best we can, but we have to accept a certain level of, or just acknowledge that sometimes various kinds of risks can't be necessarily totally controlled. Keep the team reporting to you on progress, and let everybody in the company know how the implementation is going, because everybody will have some kind of input for the implementation. They'll all be using the system after it's implemented, that's for sure. And it'll keep people kind of interested in what's going on and hopefully enthused. And there we have it. Start with a cross-functional team. The more areas you can get represented, sales, we talked about IT, we talked about support, we talked about even HR, because there are a lot of laws that apply to personally identifiable information. What's the one I'm thinking of? That'll come to me in a minute. Privacy Act. All the laws, all the regulations that have come out of those laws are critical for HR to know, and everybody else as well. Make sure you give yourself credit for what you already have in place, and then do an information security health check to get yourself settled with where you are, and then identify all critical assets. And when you identify these, you'll see in Annex A, you identify the owner of the asset as well as what the asset is, and then keep everybody up to date on the progress. And that is it. Last poll, Jerry. So type in the number of your choice, as we said before, same as you did before. what benefit would be the most important to you from implementing? And if it isn't ISO 27001 specifically, because there are a couple others you might be interested in, but what would help you? What benefit would you gain from sort of formalizing your approach to information security? Would it help you manage your vulnerabilities? Would you have more information to identify threats sooner? Do you think it could lead to more employee involvement around the topic of information security? And then there's the continual improvement aspect of doing any one of the harmonized structure standards. And if there's anything else, you use the chat box. And was there one left over from the last poll, Jerry?
No, we already addressed that.
Okay, good, thanks.
So fours all across the board so far. We've had 4 responses.
Oh, good.
And they're all 4s. So
good. So
obviously your message has gotten through.
No, and I couldn't have done it without your help, Jerry. Thanks. And thanks to everybody who chose to answer and let us know what you're thinking. I've just got a couple more slides here there so you can get in touch with me, Jim@simplifyiso.com. And by all means, follow Kevin's lead.